I know I'm not the only wife who's ever stared at her husband's phone lighting up in the dead of night and wondered, is it really work, or am I the world's biggest fool? But even if you've been there, I promise you, you haven't heard a story like mine. I'm Natalie, 34, suburban mom of two, and the queen of making excuses. Or I used to be. Looking back, it's almost funny how much of my life I spent smoothing over Mark's late nights and urgent calls from Singapore. I wish I could say I always suspected something, but the truth is, suspicion is what gets you through a decade of marriage, a mortgage, soccer games, and PTA meetings. Denial is. If you drove past our house on Maplewood Lane, you'd see the red door with a seasonal wreath. Valentine's Day, 4th of July, Halloween, you name it. Flower beds I took too much pride in, and Mark's car in the driveway. Well, at least when he wasn't traveling for work. From the outside, we looked like every other happy family on the block. Let me give you a snapshot of a normal Tuesday before my life exploded. Molly, our 9-year-old, would be perched at the kitchen island, tongue sticking out in concentration over her math worksheet. Ethan, 7, would shout at his Fortnite squad, one sock always missing. I'd be trying to make something healthy for dinner, the dog begging at my feet, my phone buzzing with PTA group chat drama. Mark, if he was home before bedtime, it meant a deal had fallen through. On that particular October night, the wind rattled the windows. I watched leaves swirl across our porch while microwaving the same leftovers I'd made on Sunday. Molly poked at steamed broccoli with her fork, nose wrinkled. "Do I have to eat this green stuff, Mom?" I ruffled her hair and said, "Just 3 bites. For me." Ethan was too focused on his game to even notice dinner existed. Mark texted at 6:27 p.m., "Running late, call with the Singapore team. Love you." 3 hearts as if that made up for the empty chair at our table. I sighed and sent, "No problem. Don't work too hard," resisting the urge to add, "Remember it's family night." Because after 11 years together, you stop picking every battle. But that night, as I set his plate aside for the fridge, I couldn't help but replay the last month in my mind. The new password on our shared laptop. The random business dinners that were never on the calendar. The credit card charge at that Italian place downtown, the one we always said we'd go to together, but somehow never did. I told myself it was stress. His industry, tech startups, was brutal, cutthroat, and Mark had always been a bit of a workaholic. That's what attracted me to him in the first place. Ambition, drive, the kind of laser focus that made everyone else fade into the background. I used to joke that he could sell sand in the desert. He'd laugh, pull me in, and whisper, "But I only want to come home to you." Maybe that's why, when the first business trip stretched from 3 days to a week, I didn't question it. I was too busy juggling parent-teacher conferences, deadline extensions for clients, and a mountain of laundry that never seemed to shrink. Mark was just doing what he had to do for us, or at least, that's what I told anyone who asked. My best friend Jess wasn't so sure. "You're running yourself ragged, Nat. When's the last time you two had a real conversation?" She'd ask as we sipped burnt coffee at the kids' soccer game. I'd brush her off. "It's just a busy season. We'll take a vacation soon when things slow down." I'd been saying that for years. On that Tuesday, Mark finally got home just before midnight. I was curled up on the couch, half asleep with a book on my chest, the TV playing one of those home renovation shows we always meant to binge together. He slipped in quietly, trying not to wake me or the kids, but I was up. "You hungry?" I asked, my voice softer than I meant it to be. He shook his head, didn't meet my eyes. "Had dinner at the office." He dropped his bag by the door and went straight to the den, closing the door behind him. I watched his silhouette through the frosted glass, hunched over his phone, face lit by the blue glow of the screen. Something about that moment made my stomach twist. Not the way it used to when I thought he was cheating. God, I'd convinced myself that was too cliché, too Lifetime movie. No, it was worse. It was like he was gone, present in the house but missing from my life. I lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling, replaying every sign I'd ignored. The accidental overdraft on our checking account. The time he forgot Molly's birthday. The perfume on his shirt that wasn't mine, too floral, too young. I asked once. He laughed it off. Receptionist at the co-working space spilled her coffee on me. She's always drowning herself in cheap perfume. I let it go. The next morning, a manila envelope arrived in our mailbox, stamped with the logo of a law firm I'd never heard of. Addressed to me, Natalie Williams. I stared at it for a full minute before tossing it on the kitchen counter, wedged between a pizza coupon and a stack of Molly's artwork. If I'd opened it right then, maybe I would have called Jess or my mom or even Mark, forced a conversation, demanded the truth. But instead, I poured another cup of coffee, packed the kids' lunches, and told myself I'd deal with it later. That later would come much sooner than I expected. The unopened envelope sat on our granite countertop for days. It became a kind of centerpiece, right between the bowl of apples I kept buying and forgetting to eat, and the stack of mail I never quite got through. Sometimes I'd catch Mark glancing at it, just a quick, nervous flick of his eyes before he busied himself with work emails or the news. I'd reach for it, thinking today's the day I face whatever this is, and then chicken out, telling myself it was probably a boring refinance notice or an offer to join some weird class action lawsuit. Funny how hope can look a lot like denial. That Friday morning, as I wrangled Ethan into his shoes, left foot first, always, "It's lucky, Mom," and reminded Molly for the 100th time to grab her violin, the envelope nearly got swept up with the recycling. But something in my gut said, don't, just wait. Mark was already gone, the smell of his cologne lingering in the hallway. He said he had an early meeting, I told the kids, even as a little voice in my head whispered or someone. I shook it off. Molly rolled her eyes, she was getting good at that lately, and Ethan asked, "Why does Daddy never eat breakfast with us anymore?" I wanted to say, "Because he's building a life somewhere else." But instead, I smiled and said, "He's working hard for us, buddy." The drive to school was a blur of bickering and bad radio, but after I dropped them off, the silence in the minivan felt almost sacred. I pulled over, hands gripping the steering wheel, and finally opened the envelope. Legalese poured out onto crisp letterhead. Petition for dissolution of marriage. My name, Mark's name, terms and conditions. My breath came in short, sharp bursts. My coffee sloshed in its cup holder, forgotten. I called Jess, fingers trembling so hard I could barely unlock my phone. She answered on the second ring. "Girl, you sound like you've seen a ghost." "Close," I managed. "I got served, I guess, divorce papers out of nowhere." Silence, and then, "You're kidding. Mark, are you okay?" I almost laughed, but it caught in my throat. "No, not really. Jess, I didn't even know we were fighting." She swore softly, "Want me to come over?" But I shook my head, even though she couldn't see. "No, not yet, I need to think." After that, the day unfolded like a fever dream. I tried to work emails, phone calls, client meetings, but my brain kept short-circuiting, skipping back to every late night, every emergency conference call. Had he planned this for months? Years? I remembered our last vacation, a beach trip with the kids where Mark spent most afternoons, catching up on deals from the hotel room. I'd chalked it up to his drive, his commitment. Now, I wondered if he'd been talking to his lawyer instead of his clients. That evening, I made spaghetti, comfort food, the kind I used to make when Mark and I first got married and we were too broke to go out. The kids were grumpy, fighting over whose turn it was to choose the Netflix show, and I tried to act normal. After dinner, Molly asked if she could go to a sleepover, and Ethan begged for just 10 more minutes of video games. Mark texted, "Late again, sorry." I stared at his message. 3 years ago, that would have stung. Now, it was just background noise. After the kids were in bed, I finally called my mom. She answered on the third ring, sounding half asleep but instantly alert when she heard my voice. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "Mark, he's divorcing me. I got the papers today." A long silence, and then, "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." I could hear the concern, but also something else, a kind of "I told you so" she was too kind to say out loud. I told her I was fine. I was, but she just said, "Do you want me to come over?" And I said no, again, because I couldn't face her pity yet. I needed to figure out how to tell the kids, how to keep the house, how to breathe. That night, I lay awake and let myself remember the good things. Mark's laugh, deep and sudden. The way he used to hold me after a bad day. The night Ethan was born, when Mark cried harder than I did. But even as I clung to those memories, they felt like someone else's life. I started digging. Maybe it was panic or stubbornness or just the need to feel like I still had some control. I pulled up our bank statements, scrolling through months of transactions. There were withdrawals I didn't recognize, large ones, moved to another account. Payments to companies I'd never heard of. My stomach dropped. Had he been hiding money? The next day, I called the bank. The woman on the other end of the line was chipper, friendly, and almost comically unhelpful. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Williams, but your name isn't listed on that account. Only Mr. Williams can access those details." Only Mr. Williams. I stared at my own reflection in the hallway mirror and realized I barely recognized the woman I saw there, tired, scared, but angry too. That evening, after another terse text from Mark, "Working late, don't wait up," I did something I hadn't done in years. I snooped. I dug through Mark's filing cabinet, the one he kept locked but not well enough. I found a folder labeled were forms, signatures, new account numbers. Some were joint accounts I recognized. Others, not so much. Then I found a letter, tucked between two folders. It was from a real estate attorney. The address on the letter was not our house. It wasn't even in our city. I Googled it, hands shaking. A condo, recently purchased, under the name of a woman I'd never heard of. A woman, my heart hammered in my chest. It hit me like a slap. Mark hadn't just been planning a divorce. He'd been moving our assets, our future, into someone else's name. Jess came over that night, bearing wine and hugs. We sat on the back porch in our pajamas, wrapped in blankets as I poured out everything. "He's already moved money. And there's this address, this woman, Jess, I think he's giving her everything." She stared at me, eyes wide. "What are you going to do?" I didn't have an answer yet, but as I looked out into the night, listening to the crickets and the distant hum of a neighbor's TV, I felt something settle inside me. Not panic, not grief. Resolve. He'd blindsided me once. It wouldn't happen again. If you'd asked me even a month before all this how I'd react to getting blindsided by a divorce, I probably would have laughed and said something sassy like, "Well, he better hope I don't find out, because I'd burn his golf clubs and sell his car on Craigslist." But real life wasn't a sitcom, and revenge felt less like fireworks and more like slow, choking fog. The following week was a blur of legal documents, whispered phone calls, and hiding my tears in the laundry room. Ethan and Molly knew something was wrong, kids always do, but I kept telling them, "Daddy's just really busy, but he loves you." Sometimes I almost believed it myself. I hired a lawyer. Her name was Priya, and she had a way of looking at you that made you feel both completely exposed and absolutely protected. We met in a tiny office above a cupcake shop, the kind of place that smelled like buttercream and lost dreams. She reviewed the documents with a grim expression. "He's moved almost everything out of your joint accounts. Some of these properties, these investments, he's put them in the name of a trust, but look at this, he's not the only trustee. See this name?" She tapped the paper and I saw it, Rebecca Sullivan. Not a name I recognized, but it sent chills through me anyway. Priya looked me dead in the eyes. "Has your husband mentioned this woman?" I shook my head, my mouth dry. "No, never. He said he worked late, lots of business travel. I trusted him." She gave me a sympathetic smile that wasn't pitying, just real. "People who want to hide things get creative. I'll file an emergency injunction to freeze as many assets as possible, but we have to move fast." My head spun. I wanted to throw up or scream or call Mark and demand he come home and explain himself, but I did none of those things. Instead, I thanked Priya, paid my retainer, and walked out into the sunny afternoon feeling both powerful and completely untethered. That night, I lay in bed replaying every late night at the office, every sudden business trip, every time Mark had seemed distracted, his phone turned face down at dinner. All those moments I'd explained away. He was tired, he was stressed, he just needed space. Had I really been so blind, or had I chosen not to see? Looking back now, I realize there were 1,000 tiny red flags I ignored. The time Mark changed all our passwords for security. The way he flinched if I asked about our finances. The credit card bill that seemed too high, the mysterious Amazon packages he said were for work. At the time, I'd told myself marriage was about trust, about giving each other the benefit of the doubt. Now it felt like I'd given him the blueprint to destroy me. Jess came over the next morning, this time with donuts and an industrial-strength coffee thermos. "We're not going to let him get away with this," she declared, sitting cross-legged on my couch and scrolling through her phone. "Do you want me to do some digital sleuthing? I still have access to that background check app from when I dated that cop." I managed a shaky laugh. "Sure, if you find out he's secretly a Russian spy, let me know." Jess grinned, but her eyes were serious. "You're going to get through this, you know. You're stronger than you think." I tried to believe her. I really did. After she left, I spent hours combing through old emails, text messages, anything that might tell me how long this had been going on. I found hotel reservations in cities Mark had never mentioned, Uber receipts from places he'd never told me he'd been. My chest felt tight, my head pounding. Every new detail was a fresh betrayal. Then came the hardest part, talking to the kids. I sat them down in the living room, knees pressed together, hands twisting a throw pillow in my lap. Molly stared at me, her eyes already shining with suspicion. "Is Daddy coming home tonight?" I shook my head. "No, sweetie, Daddy, going to be living somewhere else for a while. We're going to have 2 houses now." Ethan's lip trembled. "Is it because you're mad at each other?" Tears pricked my eyes, but I held them back. "No, baby, it's not your fault. Sometimes grown-ups have problems that are hard to fix. But your daddy and I both love you so much. That will never change." Molly crossed her arms, trying to look tough. "Did Daddy do something bad?" The room went silent. I wanted to scream, yes, he did. He lied, he cheated, he stole our future. But I just hugged her, feeling her small body stiffen and then relax just a little. After they went to bed, I allowed myself to cry. Not the neat, dignified tears you see in movies, but ugly, choking sobs that left me drained and hollow. The kind of crying that makes you realize you've been holding your breath for years. Priya called the next morning. "We got the injunction. Some assets are frozen, but not all. I need you to be honest with me. Do you have any reason to think Mark has more accounts, more assets that he's hidden?" I hesitated. "There's this woman, Rebecca Sullivan. I found her name on some real estate documents. I don't know who she is." Priya scribbled something. "I'll run her name. In the meantime, don't sign anything Mark sends you, don't move any money, don't talk to him except through me." "Got it." I nodded, then realized she couldn't see me. "Yes, got it." That afternoon, I got an email from Mark. Not even a phone call. Just a cold, formal message. "I hope you understand that this is for the best. Please respect my wishes and do not contact me directly." No explanation, no apology, just legalese. My anger, which had been simmering under the surface, finally boiled over. I wrote back, fingers flying over the keys. "You owe me answers. You owe the kids an explanation. You owe me my life back." I hovered over send, then deleted it. What was the point? Mark was gone, really gone. The man I'd married didn't exist anymore. That night, Jess texted me screenshots from her investigation. Pictures of Mark and Rebecca, smiling, arm in arm, at what looked like a real estate closing. Dated 3 months before he filed for divorce. I stared at the images until my eyes blurred. My marriage hadn't just ended, it had been replaced, erased, overwritten by another woman, another life. I started reading Reddit threads, AITA, r/surviving infidelity, even r/legal advice. I wasn't alone. So many women had stories like mine, some even worse. It was both comforting and infuriating. How did we let this happen? How did I let this happen? At 2 a.m., I started drafting a post. "My husband is divorcing me in secret, and I just found out he's been moving our assets to his girlfriend. What do I do?" I never posted it, but writing it down made me feel less alone. The next day, I made a decision. I was done being the victim. I scheduled an appointment with a forensic accountant, started documenting every single expense, every missing dollar, every lie. I called Priya and told her everything. I wasn't going to let Mark erase me. Somewhere between grief and fury, I found my fight. I wish I could say that deciding to fight back magically made me feel stronger. But the truth is, most days, it felt like trying to outrun a tidal wave. Every time I checked my email, I half expected some new horror. Another bill, another threatening letter from Mark's lawyer, another mistake in our joint accounts. But I was learning. Fast. With Priya guiding me and Jess as my emotional bodyguard, I started piecing together the years of subtle financial gaslighting Mark had been running. I dug up dusty file folders, pored over credit card statements, and made endless calls to banks, insurance companies, and anyone who'd talk to me. The more I uncovered, the angrier I got. There were withdrawals I'd never approved, secret investments, and a suspiciously expensive consulting payment to Rebecca Sullivan. who, it turned out, was more than just Mark's business partner. She was the woman he'd been seeing for at least 2 years. 2 years, my stomach twisted every time I thought about all those late nights at the office. All the times he'd missed the kids' soccer games, my birthday, even our last anniversary dinner, blamming urgent work deals. Meanwhile, he was building a whole other life. The worst discovery came one Tuesday morning. I was sorting through old tax files in the basement when I found a manila envelope labeled property transfers. My hands shook as I opened it. Inside were deeds for our vacation home, our second car, even the boat we'd bought as a family dream. Every single asset had been quietly transferred to the Sullivan Family Trust, Rebecca's trust. My trust in Mark officially died that day. I marched up to the kitchen, gripping the papers so tightly my knuckles went white. Jess was at the counter, scrolling on her phone. "Jess, look at this," I choked out, shoving the documents toward her. She scanned the pages, her jaw dropping. "He's really gone full movie villain, huh? Oh my God, Emily." It hit me, hard and ugly. Not only had Mark planned the divorce for months, maybe longer, but he'd done it with military precision. He'd gaslit me, played the loving husband, all while plotting my erasure. I called Priya. He moved everything. The house, the car, the boat, the investment accounts, he put it all in her name. What do I do? Priya was silent for a beat. "We're going to file for discovery. If we can prove the transfers were made in anticipation of divorce and that he did it to defraud you, a judge can reverse them. But you need to document every detail. Everything you remember, every receipt, every email." "Okay," I said, my voice small. "Emily," Priya paused, her voice gentler. "This isn't your fault. Men like Mark get away with this because they count on women being too embarrassed, too exhausted, or too trusting to fight. You're not alone." That meant more than she knew. The next few weeks became a war of attrition. Every day, I was either on the phone with Priya or meeting with accountants. I stopped sleeping. My appetite vanished. I moved through the house like a ghost, trying to keep things normal for Ethan and Molly. One evening, after the kids were asleep, I found myself standing in our walk-in closet, staring at Mark's old suits and shoes. I realized with a jolt that even these were gone. He'd taken his favorites, left the rest like abandoned shells. I sank onto the floor, surrounded by empty hangers, and cried until my body ached. Looking back, I can see how trauma can turn you into someone you don't recognize. I started questioning everything. Was I too cold? Too controlling? Was Mark right to want out? But every time I started blaming myself, I remembered the facts. The lies, the betrayal. That's when the anger started burning hotter than the grief. It was Jess who gave me the push I needed. "Why don't you do what you're best at? Take this public. You know social media better than anyone. Tell your story, maybe it'll help someone else." At first, I scoffed, airing my dirty laundry on the internet. But then I started seeing it everywhere: Reddit threads about secret divorces, Facebook groups for women blindsided by financial infidelity, podcasts about gray divorces. I wasn't alone. I wasn't even a rare case. That realization was as comforting as it was infuriating. So one night, after 3 glasses of Pinot Grigio and a pep talk from Jess, I opened TikTok and hit record. "Hey, I'm Emily. If you're watching this, you might think I look like a put-together suburban mom, but plot twist. I'm currently being secretly divorced by my husband, who transferred all our assets to his girlfriend's trust. Want to know how to survive a hidden divorce? Buckle up." I posted it, didn't even overthink the hashtags. Divorce story, cheating husband, hidden assets, true story, wife revenge. By morning, the video had over 10,000 views. Comments flooded in, some supportive, some horrified, some from women who'd survived the same. Suddenly, I had a small army behind me. Mark's lawyer emailed Priya within hours. "Please advise your client to cease all public commentary regarding the pending divorce." Priya replied for me. My client will not be silenced about her own experience. Jess high-fived me when she saw the video had crossed 100,000 views. "You're famous, Em. You're the face of divorce justice." It wasn't fame I wanted, but the validation felt good. For the first time since Mark left, I felt powerful. Then came the day of the first court hearing. I put on my sharpest blazer and most intimidating lipstick, and Jess came with me for moral support. Priya was already inside, cool and collected. Mark showed up in a navy suit, hair perfectly gelled, looking for all the world like a man who just closed $1 billion deal. Beside him was Rebecca, tall, chic, effortlessly smug. She didn't look at me. Mark did, briefly, his expression unreadable. The hearing was a blur. Priya argued for asset freezing and full disclosure. Mark's attorney argued the transfers were routine business planning. The judge listened, stone-faced. When it was my turn, I told my story. My real story. The one about late-night business calls, about being gaslit and betrayed. I didn't cry, I didn't beg. I looked the judge in the eye and said, "Your Honor, I was married to this man for 13 years. I raised his children. I trusted him. And he tried to erase me." That night, as I sat in my now half-empty bedroom, I realized something. Mark could take my house, my money, even my sense of safety, but he couldn't take my voice. He couldn't take my story. Looking back now, I see how much power there is in speaking up. But the war wasn't over. The next court date was looming. Ethan and Molly were struggling at school. I was broke, tired, and terrified, but I was done being a ghost in my own life. It was time to fight for everything Mark thought he'd taken from me, and maybe, just maybe, build something better out of the ruins. The aftermath of that first court hearing was brutal. The internet was still buzzing over my story, my video was getting stitched and duetted by other TikTokers, and I was flooded with DMs, some encouraging, some accusatory, all relentless. Even my old college roommate sent me a message. "Emily, is this really you? I'm so sorry. Call me if you need to vent." My phone was suddenly my lifeline and my biggest source of stress. Every ping made my heart race. People I barely knew were telling me their own horror stories, wives who'd come home to empty bank accounts, moms whose husbands had mortgaged their homes without telling them, women who'd learned about divorces from the sheriff. I realized Mark wasn't just a bad apple. He was a symptom of a much bigger problem. Ethan and Molly started asking more questions. I tried to shield them, but it was impossible to hide everything. Molly overheard a heated call with Priya and started crying at breakfast. "Are we going to have to move, Mommy? Is Daddy mad at us?" My heart cracked open. I hugged her so tight she squirmed. "Of course not, sweetie. Daddy and I just have to talk about some grown-up things. You're safe. You'll always have a home, I promise." But it felt like a lie. That was the worst part, realizing how much of my old life was built on lies, and how hard it was to find truth for my kids now. Jess came over almost every day, and we developed a routine. She'd bring coffee and her dog, Buddy, and we'd set up at the kitchen table with laptops, legal pads, and sticky notes everywhere. She started calling us Team Reality Check. I needed her optimism. Some days I wanted to crawl under the covers and disappear, but there was no time for that. Priya became a constant voice in my ear. She'd text reminders, drink water, eat lunch, between legal updates. She was fighting for an emergency injunction to freeze the assets Mark had transferred, but warned me it might take weeks or longer. Meanwhile, Mark's lawyer kept sending intimidating letters. Accusations of defamation, veiled threats about custody, even one suggesting my TikTok posts could be detrimental to the kids' welfare. The irony was unreal. He'd blown up our lives and now wanted me silent for the sake of the children. One day, Priya called me, her tone serious. "Emily, I need you to brace yourself. Mark's attorney filed for temporary full custody, alleging that your public outbursts and internet fame are destabilizing the kids." I sat down hard, nearly dropping my phone. "He's trying to take my kids because I told the truth." "I won't let it happen," Priya said, "but you need to be ready. Judges are unpredictable, especially when social media is involved." I spent the rest of that day in a fog. Molly needed help with her science project. Ethan was worried about basketball tryouts. I smiled and cheered them on, but inside I was screaming. Late that night, I scrolled through my comments, searching for comfort, and stumbled upon a message that stopped me cold. It was from a woman named Lisa. "I've been through exactly this, Emily. My ex tried to take everything, including my daughter. If you ever need advice, or just someone to vent to, I'm here." I clicked her profile. She had thousands of followers and a page full of financial advice for divorced women. I messaged her back. We started chatting. She told me how she'd rebuilt her life after her husband's betrayal, how she'd learned to play offense, not just defense. Her words hit home. "Don't let Mark define you," Lisa wrote. "He's just a chapter, not your whole story." That night, I started thinking beyond the fight for assets. What if I could actually turn all this pain into something good? What if, instead of just surviving Mark's betrayal, I could help other women avoid it? The idea grew in my mind, wild and impossible and exhilarating. The next morning, I called Jess and told her, "What if I launch a blog or a YouTube channel? I mean, everyone's watching anyway. I could call it Surviving the Silent Divorce, real talk, resources, tips, warning signs. I want to make sure no one gets blindsided like I did." Jess's eyes lit up. "That's genius, Em. You could even get sponsors. You'd be like the face of financial survival." I wasn't thinking about fame or money, I just wanted purpose. Something that made all this mess feel less pointless. We started brainstorming content. Day 1, what to do when you get served. Red flags I ignored. The hidden cost of gaslighting. I filmed a rough intro video on my phone, trying to keep my voice steady. "Hi, I'm Emily. If you're watching this, you might be where I was blindsided, broke, scared. You're not alone and you're not powerless. Here, what I wish I'd known." I posted it. Within hours, it had thousands of views and dozens of heartfelt comments. One woman wrote, "Thank you for being honest. I thought I was crazy for not seeing it coming." Another said, "I showed this to my sister. She's filing for divorce now. You're helping more people than you know." I cried again, but this time it was relief. Court dragged on. Mark's lawyer fought every inch, accusing me of being unstable, painting me as a vengeful ex-wife. But my TikTok audience rallied. They fundraised for my legal fees, sent encouraging messages, even mailed handmade gifts for Molly and Ethan. And then, finally, a small victory. Priya called with good news. The judge froze the assets. Mark can't move anything else for now. I nearly collapsed from relief. Thank you, Priya, I owe you my life." "You owe yourself some credit," she said. "You didn't give up." It wasn't over. There were still endless filings, a mountain of paperwork, hours of ugly negotiations. But for the first time, I had hope. And something else happened, something unexpected. People started sharing my story with local news. I was invited to speak on a podcast about financial abuse. My DMs exploded with requests for interviews, advice, collaborations. Lisa connected me with a nonprofit supporting women in divorce. I realized I wasn't just a victim. I was becoming an advocate. Ethan and Molly noticed the change in me. "Mommy, are you famous now?" Molly giggled. "Not famous," I laughed, "just maybe a little braver than before." Looking back, it's wild to think about how much can change in a matter of months. From a woman who had everything taken from her in secret, to someone helping thousands of others spot the warning signs before it's too late. But the final showdown with Mark was still looming. He wasn't done, and neither was I. The week of the final court date arrived like a storm front, heavy, dark, and impossible to ignore. By this point, Team Reality Check had grown to include not just Jess and Priya, but also Lisa, my divorce survival mentor, and a whole online community cheering me on. I received emails from women in Texas, Minnesota, even Alaska, sharing stories and offering encouragement. It helped more than I can say. Molly had a soccer game the night before the hearing, and as I watched her run across the field, cheeks flushed, ponytail bouncing, I felt a surge of determination. I wasn't just fighting for money or property. I was fighting for my kids, my dignity, and all the women who didn't get a chance to fight back. The morning of the hearing, Jess drove me to the courthouse. I wore the same blue suit I'd worn to my first big job interview years ago, back when I believed hard work was enough to protect you from heartbreak. My hands shook, but my eyes were steady in the mirror. Jess squeezed my hand before we went in. "No matter what happens today, you've already won. Look at what you've built." I nodded, but inside I was terrified. Mark was already there, flanked by his lawyer. He avoided my gaze, fiddling with his phone, probably texting the woman he'd put on all the paperwork. The new Emily, as Jess called her with a snort. The judge was strict but fair, a woman, thank God. Priya presented our case, Mark's secret transfers, the gaslighting, the hidden assets. She even submitted printouts of my blog and TikTok page to show my positive influence and the massive support network I'd built for women in similar situations. Mark's lawyer tried to flip the script, calling me vindictive, unstable, social media obsessed. At one point, the judge interrupted. "Mr. Richards, is it true that you failed to disclose financial transfers during the required period?" Mark's face turned red. It was complicated, The judge cut him off. "Not answering the question is not an option in my courtroom." I caught Jess's eye. She winked. I felt lighter. After hours of back and forth, the judge called a recess. I stepped outside into the hallway and leaned against the wall, breathing deeply. Jess brought me coffee, her presence steadying me. "You're doing amazing," she whispered. "He's the one squirming now." When the judge returned, her verdict was clear and decisive. The court finds sufficient evidence of intentional concealment and asset transfer with intent to defraud. Effective immediately, the assets in question are to be returned to the marital estate, and a forensic accountant will supervise the division. Custody remains joint, with the children's primary residence to remain with their mother pending further review. Furthermore, this court advises both parties to refrain from using the children in any social media or public disputes going forward. I didn't win everything, but I won enough. I was able to keep the house for now. The kids wouldn't be uprooted. Mark was forced to pay legal fees. My TikTok army cheered when I shared the news. The woman he'd tried to hide everything with, she never even showed up. After court, Priya hugged me for the first time. "You did it, Emily. He can't hurt you like that anymore." I called Lisa and cried tears of relief. It's not all perfect, but I finally feel free. That night back home with Ethan and Molly, we ate pizza on the living room floor and watched a silly movie. For the first time in ages, I laughed without faking it. Molly fell asleep in my lap, clutching her favorite stuffed bunny. Ethan leaned against me, quiet and thoughtful. "Mom," he said, "does this mean we're going to be okay?" I pulled him close. "Yeah, bud, we're going to be more than okay. We're going to start fresh." The next morning, I posted a new video. This time, not from a place of pain, but hope. "Hey, survivors. Today's lesson: sometimes the person you trusted most tries to rewrite your whole life story, but you get to take the pen back. You get to decide how it ends." The messages poured in. "Thank you, Emily. You gave me courage to leave. My divorce was years ago, but I still needed to hear this. I'm in the middle of it now. Your words are a lifeline." Looking back now, I see so clearly what I couldn't when all of this began. I wasn't weak for not seeing the signs. I wasn't naive for believing in my marriage. Mark made choices, but so did I, and now I get to choose who I become next. My blog took off. I started hosting live Q&As, collaborating with divorce attorneys, financial planners, even therapists. Jess handled my emails, Lisa helped with strategy, and Team Reality Check became a real business. Mark faded into the background, a chapter closed. I learned to let go of the anger mostly. I rebuilt my credit, fixed up the house, and started planning adventures for the kids and me. We even took a road trip to Yellowstone, something I'd always dreamed of. One night, I got a message from a woman named Sharon, who'd watched my first video and found the courage to leave her abusive marriage. She ended with, "If you ever need a guest for your channel, I'd love to share my story too." That's when it really hit me. I wasn't just surviving, I was making a difference. And maybe that's the final twist Mark never saw coming. By trying to erase me, he helped me become more visible and more powerful than ever before. So if you're listening to this, and you're where I was, don't let anyone tell you your story is over. Sometimes the end of one chapter is just the start of the story you were always meant to tell. Would you have done the same, or would you have fought differently? Let me know in the comments. I'll be reading and cheering you on every step of the way. Subscribe to my Mia's Stories YouTube channel for raw, emotional stories and authentic insights that encourage healing, growth, and understanding. Don't forget to be part of a supportive space where stories inspire and lessons resonate. What do you think about this story? Let us know in the comments. Your opinion truly matters to us, and we're here for you.